Hello everyone and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well. This is the show, and I'm going to do it, where we get under the hat of all things franchising. And it's a weekly live show all about franchising, where we take a different topic each week and we have a lovely guest. And today is no exception to that. We have a fantastic guest. And the topic that we're going to be talking about today is making franchisee recruitment look, in inverted commas, easy. Now, you're going to like what I've done here when you look at Nigel's picture behind him. And to talk about that, we have the fantastic Nigel Dawson from easyStorage. Nigel, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Thanks, Harvey. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Now, this is a live show. Well, it's live if it's September the 9th at around 5:15 for about 45 or 50 minutes. So if you are here, please pop in a comment and get involved in this conversation, because I say it each week, but you are the producers and the directors of this show. And the direction we take in our conversation is up to you. So please pop in a comment, say hello, and we will recognize the fact that you're here. But while you are all doing that, let's get on with a little bit of an introduction from Nigel. Most people will, of course, know Nigel, but for those of you who don't, and to give people a little refresh, perhaps you could do a little introduction to yourself, Nigel.
Sure, will do, Harvey. I can't believe how long I've been around, actually. I was figuring it out the other day, and I had a franchisee that I recruited years and years ago contacted me on LinkedIn, and I said, "How are you getting on?" And he said, "I'm retired now." And I said, "How can you be retired? I only just recruited you." And it actually was over 35 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So most of my career has been spent in blue chip companies. I spent many years at British Gas as part of the senior leadership team, heading up franchise development, and also at Boots Opticians for many years there. And of course, prior to that, Dolland and Aitchison. I also bought Gino to the UK as well, and developed the first Gino franchise, which opened in Darlington. So before joining Tim Schlesinger in 2017 as co-founder of easyStorage, when we rented a desk for £75 a month off Stelios, and we had a laptop each and a mobile phone, and that was the beginning of easyStorage.
That's fantastic. I love. I mean, you've obviously been on our sister show, and we've done how easyStorage begun.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic story of opportunity and just, you know, taking that opportunity when it presents itself. And, you know, I love that humble beginning, and, you know, and where you're going. And but you always, to me, remain you throughout it, you know, and I love that. Yeah. Before we get into things today in the topic, let's recognize a few people who have joined us here live. We have the fantastic Penny Hopkinson, and Penny is one of our lovely supporters. She's put, "Hello, Harvey and Nigel. Hello, franchise friends. Looking forward to this episode." Well, we're looking forward to it too. And of course, as Penny is here live, she gets an extra bonus, and I'm going to show her book. And look, it's the right way around, Penny. Sometimes isn't. But if you want to get your franchise operations manuals the right way around, then talk to Penny. I'm very pleased with this advert I've come up with. But it's great to have you with us, Penny, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on franchisee recruitment. We have our regular supporter and my partner in crime in franchising brand stories. We've got Simon Wise with us. He's put, "Hello, franchise friends." It's great to have you with us, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on franchisee recruitment. Simon is a franchise recruiter. Now, this is where it's going to get confusing, but he is somebody who, of course, can get fantastic staff for your franchise business. And of course, what we're doing today is we're talking about franchise businesses, how they recruit their franchisees. We've got a LinkedIn user here that says hello. Well, hello to you, whoever you are, mysterious. Let us know who you are as well. And we have the fantastic Leslie Flowers. Leslie has a fantastic live show, goes out every Friday based on the book Think and Grow Rich. And it's given me a few real gems in my life. So please check that out. So let's get into today's subject. So Nigel, how, when you began this, did you start to approach recruiting franchisees? What were the steps you took as a business?
I think it was always to think of the whole journey from A to Z rather than just do the same old, just because it's worked in the past. I think things have changed massively over 35 years. And if you don't evolve and look at what's right for now, for today, then you miss a trick. And I think it was about just resetting and saying, what do we want to achieve and how are we going to achieve that? And based on some experience, what's worked in the past, what works well, and things that perhaps could have worked better. The beautiful thing for me with joining and being part of the foundation of easyStorage was that there was no legacy. There was nothing that was, this is how we've always done it, or this is what we've done. It was an opportunity to create something new from scratch with that blank canvas. And having a sort of robust, fit-for-purpose recruitment strategy was very much part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting, that you said there about the fact that, you could mold something from the beginning and there was no sort of legacy there that you kind of had to adapt. You could, you could create something that was just fit for purpose. And I think you're right also that things are evolving, things are changing. I think, the prospective franchisee is, they're doing their due diligence, they're understanding businesses better.
Yeah.
They're becoming more involved in that process, and I think expect a lot more from a franchisor in terms of what they deliver.
And it's so easy, Harvey. I mean, it's so easy these days.
Just
there we go, another plug for us. Chat GPT, you can get quite a lot of information about the people and the business just with some very, very simple prompts. And whatever's out there in the world will definitely be surfaced to those candidates when they're looking at you and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did this the other week about how your businesses are being found in a new era of where we're moving perhaps away from Google, or certainly there are other ways of searching for things based on questions and answers rather than keywords. And, you've rightly said that you've just got to keep evolving and changing with things as they continue to evolve themselves. Yeah. Let's have a look at a few more comments that have come in. We've got just popped in to see what was being discussed. Well, you're always welcome. And we've got here, okay, so it's Erin Sutherland is your LinkedIn user. Well, Erin, welcome to the Franchise Show. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And this is Jolita. Jolita says, hello. Well, it's great to have you with us. So Nigel, what would you say is the sort of the first step? We've got to, I think, certainly here in the UK and probably in other parts of the world, it's always a challenge to recruit new franchisees, right? People are putting their trust in a business, they're investing money. What do you think the elements or the tick boxes are for people when they're wanting to invest in a business? What do you think makes them want to sign up?
Before I answer that, Harvey, can I just share with you what we've done over the last 18 months? Because I think it sets the tone of what I want to share. Because there are a few things I think that could be really helpful to others. So just some headlines. I looked these up just before I came on the show, but a few headline stats in the last 18 months is we've had a total of 336 potential candidates register an interest in our franchise opportunity. From that, 183 of them have attended a discovery event, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. From 183 who came along, 123 of those were interested enough to come through to a one-to-one interview stage, And then from the 123 that we interviewed, 81 were signed up to an agreement and paid a deposit. So it's a 41% conversion rate on the back of 336 total candidates. I'm quite proud of that, because I think it is tough out there at the moment, and I think people are struggling. But I think we've got a system that works really quite well in terms of how we approach recruitment and how we approach that process. And it all starts with being very, very clear on what our proposition is to the candidate. So we're not fishing in a pool where there's a mismatch between what we're offering and what they're looking for. And I think that's really, really key. So we're lucky enough, we've got a brand that most people have heard of. We ride very much on the back of easyJet, clearly. And the Easy brand is well known for being great value, no frills. It's not a luxury brand, clearly. And in storage, that's a great fit. It means who wants luxury storage or storage with lots of bells and whistles? You want it to be cost effective, and you want it to do what it says on the tin. So the brand, I think, is a big selling tool for us. But I recognise that not everybody, especially if you've got some new operators starting out, or not so some brands that aren't quite as well known, that might be challenging. I think one of the other things that really helps in any business is the fact that, in our case, we have a recurring revenue stream. So any franchisee that's coming on board, it's about building that annuity, that compounding effect of recurring revenue or subscription. So as the business matures, even if you're not as busy as perhaps you were at the beginning, the revenue is continuing to build and build and build. And that compound effect of revenue on top of revenue building means that you can get to some quite impressive income numbers. One of the things that Tim used to say to me that used to make me laugh is we earn money while we sleep. There's still revenue being generated all the time. So if you combine those two things with, put that with the brand, you have something quite compelling as the starting point. We have two franchise propositions. One is very light touch, and one is full on. And again, it's identifying the people that look at us in terms of what they're looking for. If somebody's looking to do this alongside other business interests, multi-site operating, then they might, they certainly wouldn't be interested in the full on proposition that we have. That would be more like, I'm not saying buying a job, I hate that term, but it requires a full-time commitment. So making sure that the propositions that we're delivering to market are very clear in the expectations of what we're looking for from the potential candidate. And I think so setting out that proposition very, very clearly with brand, with what's expected of the candidate, is definitely the starting point.
I mean, look, there's so many fantastic things you said there. I think I'm going to start with what you said at the beginning, because it's something you said that you're very proud of. And I think it's something that is exceptional in the franchise industry. When we look at franchise recruitment, particularly from portals, when we look at this in the UK, we're sitting probably at an average of between 1% and 5%, depending on the business, right? And in the US, I've been told that's more like between 0.5% and 1.5%, right? All sorts of different figures have been put around. But, when you get there at a 40% conversion rate from inquiry coming in to someone signing up, I've been in sales for many years, selling all sorts of different things, and conversion rates definitely vary from industry to industry and product to product. But look, a 40% conversion rate, that means you're getting something right here, right?
And what's the downside of that for me is that we've had to actually close the doors to all future recruitment at the moment, because we can't handle any more. We don't need any more candidates for the rollout plan that we've got. And I love doing that side of it. I love coming to the exhibitions and meeting up with everybody and doing the shows and things. And we're not doing any more of that. We won't be at the shows that we've historically been at, because we really do not need any more people. So it's a nice problem to have. I'm not complaining, but it's a reality. Can I talk a little bit about shows. Is that okay? An exhibition?
Absolutely. You can talk about whatever you like, but before you do that, Nigel, I just want to recognize a few more people that are here, and then we will get right on to talking about shows, because it's very relevant in terms of recruitment. We've got Matthew Cancino. He's put hello all. We have the fantastic Omar. And he's put good morning, Harvey, good day. Omar does a fantastic LinkedIn show called Do We Really Know Them? And please have a look at that. We have Amdia Morrow. Hello from Vancouver. Fantastic to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on recruitment, franchisee recruitment. We have Mandy Brandon here, and she's put hello all, thanks for having me. Well, it's great to have you on. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, how franchisee recruitment is going for you. We have Ron Fillan with us. Welcome to the Franchise Show, Ron. He's put, wow, great conversion rate. Congrats on the growth. Absolutely, and I said the same thing. Fantastic. Yeah. And we have LinkedIn user. Have a great day, everyone. Have to leave now. Goodbye. That was Aaron Sutherland. Well, look, great to have you with us while you were here. So, Nigel, let's get into exhibitions, because we've touched on portals, which is, we can perhaps get into a little bit more, and websites. But, while we're on this subject of exhibitions, we've got an exhibition coming up in October. So, please share us your experiences of exhibitions and how that went.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we won't be there, but never mind. Firstly, I think exhibitions have worked really well for us, and I recognise there are lots of other channels, lots of different media and web portals and things that are great, but for us, exhibitions have been key. But I think there are some golden rules that you've got to get right at an exhibition, and I go to some of these shows and I see some really sort of half-hearted attempts where some people go and they really, and one of them once was a sign company, and they had the worst signage in the hall. I thought, that doesn't really shout great about what they're offering. But I think, anybody that's seen our stands, you'll see that they're quite a presence. They're quite large, because we want to stand out. We don't want to be tucked away in a corner. So generally we take a fairly high profile stand, and that does cost a little bit more, but we get that back in tenfold in terms of the response. And I think the other thing that's so important and often really badly done is lighting. And I'm a big advocate of good lighting on an exhibition stand. The amount of people that don't spend any money on additional lighting or bring in their own lights, and the stands those halls are not brightly lit and the stands look quite dull. If you can get the lighting right, you can make your stand pop and really stand out. And that's what you want to be doing at a show. You want to stand out. So don't be in the dark, and get some really good lighting on that. A good central focal point is key. We often will have a big lorry on there, or the last few shows we've had a shipping container on the stand. Just something different. It's something that makes people stop and look. If you're just a table with a pop-up brochure stand in front of it and some graphics behind you, you're going to look the same as everybody else. So you've got to make the stand really appeal to people and be a little bit different, and try and be a bit more creative. And, some people spend a lot of money and have big design houses come in and build these great big structures. That's not what I'm suggesting. We've never done that. We have a very simple aluminium rig. It didn't cost much. It was about £600, I think, and we use it every show. So we get our money's worth. We just have some carpet on the floor, which is orange. We do put a big piece of kit on the stand, which often helps. And we have some sofas, which I think we got off Amazon or something, that were really cheap. So it's not about how much money you spend. It's just about being a little bit more creative in terms of the use of the space. So have a decent space, light it well, and make it stand out by doing something. Just don't be there with a countertop in front of you with some leaflets on it and stand behind it with a bowl of sweets. That's not going to entice people to really engage with you. So I think those things are really important. And the other top tip for shows, and the organisers are going to hate me for this, but don't use their data capture systems. We all know when we go and register for these shows that are free to go into, what do we write on those registration cards? I certainly don't write my phone number. I don't want calls. I write a load of rubbish, as does everybody else. So when you're using your scanner and you're capturing all those details, I don't know how many Mickey Mouses you get, but how many phone numbers are just a row of zeros and email addresses that don't work. But you're just scraping a load of rubbish, and that's not useful. So we use a platform called Leader, Leadr, data capture, and it's very cheap. It costs us about £150 for the show. And that means we can put QR codes all over the stand. People then can scan that and fill out a very, very simple form, which means that because they've taken the trouble to register, the information they're now going to give us is correct. So we end up with a database of people that have given us information because they want something back. And that's how they get the information from our stand. So they might come and say, have you got a prospectus or a brochure? We don't give out paper on stands. It just ends up in the bin. We just say, simply scan this QR code, register your details, and then automatically that app will then send them some information, and most importantly, a link to our discovery event, because that's what the whole show is about. What we are selling at the show is not a franchise, it's getting them to our discovery event. We're not going to engage in the level of conversation at a show that's going to be enough to convince somebody to buy a franchise from us. All we want to do is capture them to get them to the discovery event. So that they can do very effectively, very simply with the Leader system, or there are others out there, but that one works particularly well. And it means we get a strong database of accurate information that we can then use for the show. And anyone that knows me knows I love data and stats. In 2023, at the International Franchise Exhibition, we collected 185 inquiries. At the 2024 show, we did 260 inquiries, which was a record. And at 2025, we did 160. So that's the sort of numbers that we're collecting at a show. And they're people who have stopped on the stand who have had a legitimate interest in what we're doing. And we get relevant information.
Wow. I mean, some incredible numbers there, and some great tips and advice. I think anybody who's listening to this has been to some sort of exhibition in their life, right? Even if they haven't been to a franchise exhibition, even if they're new to it. But some really important things there. Positioning. If you're going to do it, it's expensive, whatever way you do it. Even if you go for a very standard build, and not anything particularly elaborate. So if you're going to do it, you might as well make it stand out and make an impact. And I also like what you do by putting things on the stand that are big and impressive, but that's not build. It's not a big build cost. It's just bringing a thing in and putting it on there. And because there's a thing that's different to everything else, it draws people in. I mean, you've got obviously a fantastic color to draw people in, bright and vibrant, which helps. But lighting, I think that's a really, really valid tip here. We're talking today about franchisee recruitment, but it starts at this base level when you're trying to do this to make yourself look an attractive prospect to someone. And like you say, if you've just got a standard stand with, the graphics at the top that every stand has, and you've just got a table and some leaflets, people just walk past it. It's not interesting. It's not engaging. But to have a great big orange storage box, or, one of the vans where you've got a picture behind you, it makes people stop. Let's have a look.
Creative. Just be creative.
Yeah, definitely. You've definitely got to be creative. Let's have a look. We've got a comment, and I want to welcome Joe Caruso to the show. Joe is from America, and he's put, hello, Nigel and Harvey. Of course, franchisee recruitment is easy when you use the easy in the brand name. Well, yeah, I mean, look, a great comment, Joe. And, let's touch on that a little bit. In a way that people can relate to, because if you're building a brand from scratch, it's definitely going to be harder, because in franchising, potential franchisees are looking, the reason they're going into franchising is they're looking for some security. They're looking for that proven model. And I think when you've got a brand that's so instantly recognizable as the Easy brand is, it must be a great help to you when you've throughout this journey.
Yeah, that's right. But it is worth saying, through my career, I haven't always had the Easy brand. Recruitment has been across many brands, and they all have their, the pros and their cons against them. So, it's definitely an asset, and it's an asset we clearly leverage, because why wouldn't you? But we haven't always had that.
No, and whatever brand you've got, following some of those basic principles that you've said, where we're talking now about exhibitions,
Yeah.
and that's very much a part of franchisee recruitment. Following, letting your be creative. Look at lighting. I wrote down here, don't leave your franchisees in the dark. And I think that that's true on many levels, but particularly on lighting. Let's have a look. We've got a comment come in here from Simon. Let's have a look at this one. Simon's put, how important is your existing franchisee validation in the recruitment process?
Yeah.
This is a great one, particularly, I suppose, at the beginning when you were growing it and people were signing into a great brand, a great process, a great potential opportunity. But how is that validation process, the beginning and now as you're growing, has that played an important part?
It does. And, we use it a lot these days. And I do sometimes just have to wobble my head a little bit and think, what did we used to do? Because, I mean, when we first started the Easy Pod side of it, we covered the whole UK in franchisees in 18 months. That was 80% of the UK covered. And we had none of that validation. And I do sometimes just reflect back and say, I'm not quite sure how we achieved that, because today we use it a lot and we take candidates out to visit sites and meet other franchisees and we share a lot of data, and it's a big part of the process. It really does quite amaze me that we ever managed to get the traction we got as early as we did, given we didn't have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I imagine it was the brand really helped at the beginning there. It really helped. And I think if you're someone that doesn't have a big well-known brand behind you, then you've got to do other things to help potential franchisees feel confident, feel comfortable, maybe adjust the terms, maybe, offer things that way.
I think also just being authentic and being genuine, no, and I'd say it on here, but no bullshit. And that's something that's really been very close to me all through my career. Is I'm a very sort of naturally quite transparent person. I'll share pretty well anything apart from payroll if someone asks, because at the end of the day, if they've asked, they want to know, and there's a reason for that. And I think that all falls through into, we've talked about the exhibition and we've collected the data, but then what happens? One of the things that we don't do is give out literature. Because and it's one of my pet hates, and I've seen some pretty impressive franchise brochure. A brochure will never sell your franchise. People buy people. And if you're trying to sell a franchise by giving out a real nice glossy brochure, then that's not going to deliver the results. We actually don't give anything out really other than a very, very simple piece of information, really just so that we can get the information, get the name and address and email so that we can send out that information. Because the moment we start getting into any level of detail in a brochure, people will start to make judgments and decisions based on a very limited amount of information. So all we want to, and I sort of alluded to this a moment ago, is get candidates to a discovery event. That is the primary thing. And that discovery event is going to be a 4-hour, typically with us, it's 4 hours of presentation. And that might sound, oh my God, 4 hours of presentation is going to be, death by PowerPoint. So it's really important to make that entertaining, informative, so that people come away from it feeling they've had a really good session and it's not just sat there looking at a screen. So the discovery event is really key, and we do a number of things here. First of all, we generally hold it at head office, so it tests a candidate's commitment. If they're not prepared to take some time out to come here, then they're probably not that serious. So I love just getting them to here. When they get here, it gives us an opportunity to showcase who we are as a business, and they can meet people, they see the teams, they see all the things that I'm going to be talking about in the discovery event. It's real. This isn't, the substance. It's not just, words. And I think that's really key. Once they're here, the person that's going to deliver that presentation is going to be somebody that's key to the business. I'm not going to, I'm in no disrespect, I've got a fantastic team, but I'm not going to ask one of them to do that. I'm going to do that myself, or and Tim often gets involved, because I think it's important that candidates hear from someone senior in the business who has meat in the game, who represents that business, who's sincere and genuine about it. They're not just going through a deck, but they're talking from the heart, as it were. So that's key. That gives authenticity and makes it very, very real. I'm not going to hide away any information. I'm going to share warts and all. I'm going to be telling them all the good, but also the things that could be better, because no business is perfect, and we're certainly not. And I think you've got to put balance in, and to be authentic, that's both sides of the scale, not just all the glossy stuff. So I think that's key. Now, in terms of the presentation, I have a personal rule. I never use bullet points in a presentation ever, because that's tedious and boring. So my slides are going to be very conceptual. They're going to be very image driven. We are going to use some graphs and things, but we're going to make it very, very visual. And I think that's key to keeping engagement. And we're going to make it two-way. It's interactive. So we're going to be firing a lot of questions to the audience. We're going to be getting them involved. I'm interested to understand what their perception is about certain aspects of what I'm talking about before I share the results. But the thing I'm going to start that presentation with, and it sounds a bit odd this, is I'm going to start with the numbers. Because ultimately, everybody in that room, what they really want is the numbers. So I'm not going to make them sit through 3 hours of presentation before I get to it. We're going to open that presentation with the headlines, with the P&L and the numbers. Then I'm going to spend the presentation explaining how we're going to deliver those, and how with the support on the franchise system and everything that we do, how those numbers are going to come alive. But if I hold out on that, all I've got is a room of people watching the clock, waiting to get to the ultimate bit as well, what the numbers look like. So we're going to open with that very, very early on.
I love that. I'm just going to pause you at that point, because I remember going back years. I had a business coach. I think it was Action Coach, actually. A little name drop for them, but it was going back years. And I was selling commercial kitchens at the time. What he told me to do is to put the price of the commercial kitchen on the front cover in the biggest font. That it almost went all the way across, and that was the total price, because otherwise all people were doing is flicking through this thing right to the end to find out what that was, right? Because that's the piece of information they wanted to know. Get it out of the way, address it straight away. And it's interesting to hear you're doing the same, and I think it's really important, because then people they go, okay, right, got that bit of information that I desperately wanted. Now I'm listening. Now I want to know.
Now, how am I going to deliver that? How am I going to get to that? That becomes now the route rather than the weight.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's really interesting. Really interesting. I love the fact that when you're at an exhibition, the idea is you're not selling the franchise, you're not selling the product. Just what you're selling is the next stage. You're selling the discovery day. That's the objective of the exhibition, is to get people to a point where they can have a bit more time to find out more about it, and you find out more about them. And for people to understand that, whether they make an inquiry or however they make that inquiry, I think that's really important. I love that. Great.
And the discovery is a broadcast. We're not actually, we know nothing about, by the time we come to the end of that, we still don't know anything about them. So the first thing I'm doing here is, let's let them self-select. I'm not going to interview everyone in that room to find out half of them weren't interested in the first place. So I'm going to share everything and some pretty confidential information. We will send the deck out afterwards, but we won't necessarily have all the information that I've shared in that room, because some of it is sensitive. But we're ultimately going to let them self-select. Then if they're interested, when they come to the one-to-one sessions, we know they're interested. Then now we flip it. And at this point, the attitude is, convince us why we should consider you as a franchisee.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I like that as well, because I was just about to say, when a couple of things that really stood out to me there is you let people self-select. So they've been to the discovery day. You're waiting for them to come to you, right? You're not chasing them to say, be a franchisee. We can do this, we can do that. You're letting them select if they're keen enough to want to try and do it. And then not only have you got that as a sort of position, you're then saying, well, look, sell to us why you should be a franchisee. And you've got to have a fantastic proposition, and to have built something during that discovery day to get
discovery. Sorry, Harvey, I'm talking over you. The discovery day gets them on the hook.
Yeah.
Okay, for simplicity, it gets them on the hook. The next stage now is that, because at the end of a discovery day, the excitement in the room is going to be high. They heard what we've got to say. It is pretty good stuff, otherwise we wouldn't be saying it. Now they want it. Now it's the opportunity to reverse it.
I think it's really interesting as well, because I think a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into their brochures and they get these things sent out, right? But actually, like you rightly said, people buy from people, and putting a bit more time into that next step, whatever that step is, if it's a discovery day, right? And discovery days are widely used in franchise as that sort of next step beyond that first phone call. And put that effort into that discovery day, make that discovery day really inspire and excite that potential franchisee as to what their future's going to be. I mean, do you sort of build a picture as to what that day to day is going to look like for them and what that lifestyle looks like? Is that
Totally.
what really?
So we'll start with the numbers, then we'll get on to missions and values. Who are we? What's being part of easyStorage like? Then we'll move on to Tim's story, which sets out why storage, it endorses our credibility, I suppose, to why we can talk to them about becoming a storage business, because we know what we're doing, because that's Tim's background. Then we talk about the market, so market fit. Why should storage be a good business to invest in the UK at this point in time? So what's the size of the prize? How big's the market? Where's it going? What's it growing? Then we get into the franchise itself. Well, we get into the offer first of all. What is the franchise? So what does that look like? What are they going to be doing? What's that on a day-to-day basis? Then we get into how we support them. So finding sites, finding land, the support structures, the training, the tech, the IT, the call centers, all the things that make their business come alive. Then we get into to Simon's point, into the endorsement. So we're going to share some actual performance data. So we're going to look at real performances against plan so that they can see how businesses have performed to date, which gives that endorsement, which is really important. And then we're going to get to next step, or questions, and then next steps. And the next steps is concluded by literally saying, we will not be following you up. If you are interested, we will send you, after the discovery day, we will send you the deck and we'll send you an application form. If you fill out that form, we'll send you a link to attend a one-to-one meeting. If you don't, we won't be following you up. We're not here to sell a franchise to you. And it's really that, that passive.
I really like that. I think that's something that people should really listen to, that you should be able to get into a position where somebody is interested and excited enough about this for them to be the driver in this. You're not phoning people up and saying, oh, you've been to a discovery day, what do you think? We'd like you to get you in. You're not doing any of that. In fact, I love the fact that you say, okay, we're not going to be following you up. No one will be chasing this.
And to come back to my earlier number, 183 have attended, 123 of them have come to one-to-ones. So the majority of people that come through that process do proceed to the next stage.
It's really important and really interesting for franchisors and franchisees listening, and potential people who are going to invest, to realize how important discovery days are. In fact, let's have a look. I've got a couple of comments I want to put up. Brandy's put, agreed, discovery days are essential and really key to the entire process. And I think a lot of franchisors realize they've got to do a discovery day, but not always realize what they've got to put into that, what that's got to do, how that's got to develop things. What stages someone's got to go through during that discovery day to go from they were interested to now they really want this. They're making a phone call the next day. They're filling out this form, and it filters people, doesn't it?
And we make them fun. Discovery Day isn't just about us doing a rigid broadcast. I mean, there's humour in there. There's an element of banter. There's fun. It should be an enjoyable event. They should enjoy coming and learning and building that excitement. It shouldn't be a chore. And I love doing them. I mean, I get so excited every time, we've got one on, because I just get a real buzz from the energy in the room and getting up and doing those things and talking to people about it. It really energizes me.
I love it. And that comes across because I know you well, Nigel, and I know you on and off these type of things, but you come across when you're doing this exactly the same person as you are. You are great fun. And I think that needs to come across in your discovery days. because you're a big part of the business, as is Tim and as is all of the team.
Yeah.
But always when I meet you guys, fun comes across, right? And
Yeah.
I think that needs to come across in your discovery day. That's part of truly who you are as a person and as a business, and it's part of your culture. It needs to come across because it helps you find people who are similar and are going to enjoy that, you know.
Yeah.
Really, really important. So let's have a look at another couple of comments. We've got one coming up from Joe that I'm going to put up on the screen, but Ron has put, love your process. I can see bits here that I would implement for clients. Gold nuggets. There you go. You can have that quote there, Nigel. In brackets, it'll be on something. And let's have a look here what Joe's got to say. Many franchise sellers lack effective workflows for their team members to utilize, so to qualify people and advance them through to a successful transaction. Can't be weak on this. Yeah, I mean, the people that work within your business have got to understand your process and understand that prospect journey, how they take someone through that, and what's expected of everyone throughout that process. It's really
You shortcut it. If you shortcut it, it will bite you later on. There'll be something that'll come up they weren't aware of, or you realise that you hadn't covered because they didn't attend the discovery day or whatever it was, and it'll come around and bite you. It's so important to follow the process.
Yeah.
It's also a good test. Can franchisees or candidates follow the process? Because if they can't follow that process, there's no chance in hell they're going to follow your franchise processes. So it's a good test for that too.
Absolutely. I'm interested. You know, we've gone a little bit about how you've attracted franchisees to the business, and we've talked about a little bit of the process there of discovery days and one-to-ones. At what point does the commitment fall in your business? So someone's come back to you after a discovery day and they're really keen, they've filled in the form, they want a one-to-one. Where does the commitment, the signature, the paying the deposit, whatever it might be, where does that come in your business?
It's the very next stage. So once we've done the one-to-one, at the end of that meeting, we're basically going to conclude it by sending them a deposit agreement. And they are required to pay a 10% deposit to become what we call an active candidate. And that is a candidate that we are now actively looking for a location, because a lot of the container franchisees, it's all about finding the right land. So there is quite a significant timeline and quite a lot of work that has to go in. So we're not going to start the land searches for them and drawing up the proposals and the surveyors reports and things that we have to do until we've got that commitment. So following the one-to-one, that one-to-one's a 2-hour session typically. I don't always do those because I just haven't got the time to do every one of those. So some of my team will cover that. They'll give the candidate the opportunity to ask any questions that have arisen from the discovery day, because you bombarded somebody with 4 hours worth of content, you can guarantee there's some questions. And we'll also, at that one-to-one, we're starting to now really question them around their motivation. The application form captures all the basic stuff like levels of investment, how much the depth of funding needed, all the stuff that we're not going to waste time just asking all those questions, because they're stock questions that we'll collect on the form, but we will go through with them anything of concern. So we're really trying to understand the scale of investment, because our investment can range quite significantly depending on the scope of the site, and also what their motivation is, what their exit strategy might look like, what they want out of it, why they're interested, But it's not a detailed screen at that point. They're still in the process. And one of the things that I talk to candidates about, it is a process. All the way through this, we're getting to know each other better and better. So just because they go through to the next stage, there is no guarantee they'll still become a franchisee. So they pay their 10% deposit. One golden rule, part of the deposit agreement, is if we reject their application at any point in that process, that deposit is 100% refundable, because that is our choice. However, if they pull out of the process, having had us visit 3 sites and evaluate them and do drawings and plans and all the things that we do, and then they decide to go and, emigrate and live in Australia, we will deduct from that deposit any costs that we've incurred. Yeah. So they put 10% on the line, as it were. We will then go through until we identify the actual site. And once we've identified the site, then the business planning process starts, the funding process starts. This all culminates ultimately in a sign-off meeting where they present to us the business plan, and I usually have a panel of people in for that. It's a mixture of different senior people across the business, and the candidate has to stand up and present in front of that room how they're going to deliver that plan. Now, we've read the plan, we know what it says. What we're really looking to see is, do they understand it? That's actually what we're doing. So have they got a total grasp of what they're doing? At the end of that meeting, we will either reject them as a candidate, in which case we refund their deposit. We will approve them as a candidate, happy days, let's move forward and get the site open, or we will approve them with conditions. So it might be that something came up in the process that just needs covering off, and it might be approved subject to something, sort of 3 statuses. In all the time I've been doing this, and we've now got 26 sites on the container side launched, 24 franchisees on that, and 24 franchisees on the pod side, we have only ever rejected one person at that stage where we felt they were unsuitable to proceed. So it's a very unlikely thing because we've got to know them through the process, but it could happen. And that way.
And if it happens, you're refunding it as well, which is, completely fair, so yeah.
It's because we get to see the side of people that we don't often see right at the early stages, and especially when you're working through close projects of opening, which requires property acquisition. You see them sometimes under a little bit of pressure and how they react, and the facade that we saw initially might not actually be the true reflection of what we're actually seeing later on in the process. So we always have that right to say thanks, but no thanks. But they shouldn't be financially exposed, and that's our choice, and therefore, they're protected.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, look, we have actually come to the end of the first part of today's show. It's been an amazing conversation, and I really want to thank you, Nigel, for your time and sharing. I mean, I always start off with nothing written down, but I have all of this written down now. It's always fascinating, always a huge learning for me. Amazing audience that we have here, fantastic questions. I think in fact we've got another question come in. If Nigel's got the time and if I've got the time, we will continue to look at the questions that might come in on the LinkedIn or the YouTube and try and answer those afterwards, and the conversation can continue. But we have now got to the last part of the show. This is the part of the show where, of course, my screen has to go blank because it's now illegal to see me without wearing some sort of hat. And of course, I've got a lovely hat, and this hat was made for me by Paul Murphy, PJ Murphy and Sons, bespoke British hatters. So if you'd like a hat like this, have a chat to Paul. Now, this is the part of the show where we're going to stop talking about franchisee recruitment, and we're going to find a little bit that goes on in Nigel's life. A little bit about him. What's behind that cheeky smile? So look, I'm going to ask you, and you can choose. Have you ever met anyone famous? Have you got a claim to fame or some sort of unusual hobby of some sort? And then you get to ask me any question you like, which I'm nervous about, but okay.
You should be. Okay. So I got to answer that. Have I ever met anybody famous?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, right. Okay. All right. Let me leave this image in your head. I did stand next to Ben Shepherd while he had his penis in his hand.
Okay. I think that's where it needs to end.
That makes Tipping Point a very, very different show for me.
I love it, Nigel. That's brilliant. Well, everyone can imagine what that story was, and I think that's the best place for them to be. Well, look, I promised you could get your own back on me as well. You've answered all these questions beautifully and shared some gold nuggets, as one of our lovely audience members put it. But now you get your chance to get your own back on me and ask me anything you like. So you can let me get away with it, but
no, definitely not. We were having a debate recently with actually somebody and it was over a beer, and we were talking about how many hats you've actually got. Okay. And there was a debate between the biggest hat and the smallest hat, and that led to, can you imagine Harvey doing the full Monty with his hat? So the question was, how big would the rim of your hat need to be for you to do that?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I haven't done the full Monty yet on the show.
Yeah.
And it would depends what it needs to cover. If it if it needs to cover if it needs to cover my arse, which I often needs to do when I've said something wrong or I've got myself into trouble, then I guess it would need to be fairly big to cover the things that I've done. I like this question. You've got me feeling awkward. I don't know what to say.
I told you I'd get you.
And I love it. But you know what? It's always great fun to chat with you, Nigel, and it's been great fun, and you've shared some fantastic things. So look, a huge thank you to you for being on the show today. And I'd like to thank our wonderful community, our audience, because this show is what it is because you're here and because you get involved and you drive these conversations. So a big thank you to you all, and a thank you to you, Nigel. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. So that just leaves me to say what's going on next week. And next Tuesday, September the 16th, we've just talked about hats. And next Tuesday, we are going to be talking wearing different franchise hats. And the lovely Paul Murphy is going to be our guest. So we're going to probably be talking literally about hats and also, of course, about the very varied roles that we play as franchisors and franchisees. So please join us next Tuesday, 5:15 p.m. GMT and 12:15 EST. And until next time, my friends, take very good care.